Hello, I'm old Mr. Kent and 82 years old. On my morning E-Trike ride, I do this quite often. Naturally, I cough a lot. I'm here in Arizona where it's pretty dusty. And so this might be a little longer video than usual. I've talked about the paper route that I had, or paper routes that I had when I was in junior high growing up in Seattle. We lived on Capitol Hill. Back then, that would be 70 years ago or so. Back then, 65, I suppose. Capitol Hill was a lot different than it is now. It was a fairly nice residential area. And from what I've heard, it's gone downhill. So, anyway, I was in junior high. We lived on the block where there was a garage in the alley, and that's where they delivered the Seattle Times papers to be delivered every day. And so somehow or not, I decided to get a paper route. So I signed up, and they gave me all the information. And the route that I had was, where I lived, it was to the west of our house, several blocks. And so what we would do is, we got a bunch of cars coming here. All right, here he goes. Anyway, what we would do is, in the afternoon, like after school, the truck would come down the alley, and there was this old garage that it was made out of heavy planks and beams, and it was a double garage, and the Seattle Times rented one half of it, I suppose, and they would drop off the papers, and the paper bundles would have our route number on them, and I guess they did that by machine or something. But anyway, so then we'd put our papers. Actually, we would put them in we had this thing that went over our shoulders. I don't know what they called it. I can't remember now. But it had a great big pocket, and you put your papers in there. And they showed us how to fold them up so that you could get them all in there and pull them out one at a time. And so that's what we did. And I walk over to my paper route, go along. And at first I had to use a book to remember what addresses were there and stuff. But then it's not long till you don't need the book anymore. So you leave that home. And so I delivered papers every day. And then Sunday morning, the Seattle Times was delivered in the morning on Sunday. That's a great big paper, it's got cartoons and sale ads and all that kind of stuff in it. And so so that's what, it was a bigger thing. So I would usually, at that point in that, on that route, I would put them in I had a wagon, and I would stack them up in the wagon, and it didn't work really well, but anyway, I couldn't carry them all. And so I stack them up in the wagon and go along and deliver the papers. And the Sunday morning paper could not be folded. So anyway, excuse me. That's what I did on that route. And then I had a couple of instances. But anyway, I had a couple of instances. One of them was this one house is a two-story house. It had been, I imagine it had been converted, remodeled, or whatever, so that on the back side of the house, there was an apartment built with an exterior stairway that went up, with a railing and everything, and to the back door. So that every day I'd hike up that stairway and then leave the paper and hike back down again. Well, then you also had to go collect once a month, near the end of the month, you go collect. And I think it was probably about $2.50 or something like that. And back then, there was no such thing as a credit card. So everybody had cash. and you'd collect $2.50 and go on. Well, it must have been a Friday night, and I was collecting, and I came along to this house, went up the stairs, and all the lights were on, really bright and everything, and all the windows. There was a lot of windows on this little exterior apartment they had built, and so I knocked on the door, and I guess the reason the lights were on was because these two young women were, I suppose they're in their 20s. They were waiting for somebody, and so they came over and they opened the door, and they were smiling and excited, and then they realized it was just the paper boy, and that's another case where they said, "Oh, it's you." So anyway, collecting for the times. I don't know what they were, probably had some heavy dates or something anyway, and so I just took the money and ran. So anyway, that was that route, and I had it for quite a while. And then when I would come home every day, I had to come by this little delicatessen that was at the bottom of I guess it was like an apartment house, and it was a little delicatessen. It was run by Mr. Winkler. He was an old guy, super nice guy, and I usually stop in there and get a Coca-Cola, and then boy, what were those things called? My memory is not too good. Anyway, they were chocolate, and they had there were little round balls, and they had chocolate on the outside, and then a kind of a foamy chocolate on the inside. And any other time I could remember what they were called, but not while I'm telling the story. So I'm gonna wait for these people to figure this out. Anyway, if I remember them, I'll tell them, because if I'm not telling the story, I can always remember it. But anyway, so I'd have a handful of those. I think they were a penny a piece, and so I'd have a handful of those in a Coke. Visit with old Mr. Winkler, and then I'd head on home. Well, that worked for a couple of years, and then, or I don't know how long it worked actually, but I had to quit because for one reason or another, my folks were going on vacation, and I needed to be gone for a week or two or something. I don't know. So I quit that paper route. And then when I got back, because I saved money on that paper route, and then got a jet going over. Every Christmas, I'd save up $100, and every Christmas, there were 10 people living in my house. I think I mentioned that, with Grandma, Grandpa, and aunts and everything. And so I'd spend $10 on everybody at Christmas time. And $10 back then, that was a lot of money, but I was proud to do it. So anyway, I had to quit that. And then when we got, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but then I decided I wanted a paper route again. So I signed up to get one, and they gave me this paper route that was, the one that I had was to the west of our house. And then they signed me to one that was the east of our house, and several blocks away. And it was all downhill from where I lived and where the paper route was, or the paper station. So anyway, so I took that route, and at that time, to begin with, I was using my wagon and pulling it along, and that the route was in kind of a slum area. And one morning, on Sunday morning, I'm pulling my wagon along, and I hear this car coming down the street behind me, and something's rubbing, his wheels rubbing on the fender. And so I saw him coming, and I was kind of in the middle of the road, but I got over to the side because I could see that he was swerving around and everything. So he came by me, and he went around the corner and went down the street a little ways, and then parked his car, and in the process of pulling up in front of his house, he rear-ended the back of a car parked there. So that was kind of a. And another time on a Sunday morning, that I came by this house and there was a guy standing on the porch, knocking on the door, and he was saying, "Honey, please let me in. I'm sorry. Please, please, please let me in." And so, anyway, it was a slum area. And then at the end of the month, I went out to collect and going door to door. And like I said, it was, well, what happened was I'd go to the door and nobody would answer. And then I had to go back again, and then, another day. And then finally I'd get them at the door there. But then there was a lot of them. See, the kid that had it before me, I knew him. I knew who he was. And so what he did was, before I started collecting, he went early and went and collected for me, or for himself, because everybody knew that he'd been doing the paper route. So they gladly gave him the $2 or whatever. And so when I'd go to their door, they'd say, "Oh, we've already paid. Who are you?" Something like that. So I didn't make a whole lot of money. So at the end of the month, I decided I'm going to quit this route. And so it lasted a month, and I lost money. You have to pay. You have to pay for those papers because they sell them to you, and then you deliver them, and then you go collect for it. And so then you send the money in, and then they send you a check in the mail. Well, anyway, so I decided that's not the route I wanted. So I don't remember all the details, but I decided to sign up for another route. Oh, by the way, on that route, it was really nice because I'll stop here because there's traffic out there. There was this old guy. He was an old black guy, and he had a business going in an old gas station that was closed, and he sold things that people needed to heat their house. And one of the things that he sold a lot of, he sold coal and a lot of stuff, but he sold Presto logs. If you know what Presto logs are, they're compressed sawdust. And he was always burning those in his he had a wood stove there, a nice big wood stove, pot belly stove. And I'd go in there when I was delivering papers in the wintertime, and it must have been wintertime because I only did it for 1 month. Anyway, so it was always nice to go in there. He was a super nice guy, old guy, and visited with me a lot. So anyway, so now I'm going to go ahead and go into the noisy area where there's a lot of traffic, and then we'll just speed this up on the video. When I get through to where it's nice again, I'll carry on. Okay, so here we go. All right, now for part 3. So I applied again with the Seattle Times. Oh, got to go back to the last one. I finally decided that I would make a cart to carry my papers in on Sunday morning, because carrying them on my wagon, they always wanted to slide off and stuff. So I'll sketch a little picture on on Windows Paint, and so you can kind of basically see what it looks like. Anyway, It had walls on three sides, and I put wheels on the front from my wagon, and then on the back, I cut a roller skate in half and drilled a hole in it, and then I mounted it to the back in the center of the box, and it swiveled so then I could push it and turn it, from the back. And it was kind of like it's the same design as my Cessna 170 airplane, called a tail dragger, because it has the steering, has the wheel that turns it, or keeps it going straight, is in the back. And so, and that's how my paper cart was. Well, the only thing is, if you go into a store, turn it around so that the shopping cart is going backwards and the steering wheels are in the back. If you do that and then give it a shove, it'll immediately want to turn around the other direction. Good morning. And so that's kind of how my cart was. You had to keep it going straight. Otherwise, if you just let it go. Well, stupid me, Sunday morning, papers are real thick, all kinds of stuff, ads and everything, and they're all stacked in my little push cart. And the back is open so that I can grab them and, deliver them. And so I'm going down this hill, and it was an arterial street, but there was no traffic because it was so early. So anyway, and for one reason or another, it got out of my hands and started rolling downhill by itself. Well, it did the same thing that a grocery cart would do. It swung around, and when it swung around, a bunch of the newspapers got thrown out, and as they came out, they came apart. And so I pushed that cart over next to the curb, and I, as quickly as possible, started trying to put those Sunday papers back together properly. I don't know if I got them all right or not, but it looked like I did. So anyway, so then that wasn't the best design, but I did use it, and for that 1 month. So anyway, then I applied and I got another route, and the route they gave me was the one that I lived on. So in other words, I came from my house, went to the paper station down the alley, got my papers, and I didn't have to walk somewhere else to deliver papers, and I just in my neighborhood. And so I it was really nice. And for that paper route, because I did not like my the way my cart made. I made a new cart, and it was nice. It was big. It was long. I put a door in the side so I could reach in and get the papers, and it was big enough I could crawl inside and sit in there. And I even made a little shelf and put a candle on it so that on Sunday morning when it's pouring down rain, I could sit in there and wait for the papers to come. Because just my nature, I always usually try to get there before rather than being late. So it was really nice, and in order to steer it, I did like we did with our old well, not what they weren't they weren't go-karts, little hot rods. You had a 2x6 and wheels on the back and wheels on the front, and the axle was nailed to the 2x4, and then you would steer it by turning that 2x4. And so I made the box, and then I put that kind of a steering on it, and then I put a little a lever on the side that swiveled, so when I pull it this way, the bottom pushed out, and that would make it turn left. And when I pull it this way, then it would make it turn right. So anyway, so that was the cart that I had, and it worked really well. And like I said, it was covered, and the door even shut. And my brother, he liked me for push him in it. He'd close the door, and I'd push him around. Anyway, uh, so that's what I used. And then I delivered my papers on Sunday morning with that. Okay, so that was a nice route. A couple of a couple of things happened. Um, I that route had hotels, had apartment buildings on it, old apartment buildings. I think those round things were gumdrops or something like that. Anyway, so this apartment building, and you just go along and put the papers in front of the door where the subscribers live, and there was this one door that was always open, and it stunk, which is why they probably kept the door open. So I'm going there, and I go to collect, and this old, well, not old, but he's fairly, he's getting up there. He came over. He had to use a crutch to walk, and so we visited, and he gave me the money. He says, "You want to know why I use a crutch?" I said, "Yeah." So he pulled up. I don't remember if it was right leg or left leg, but he pulled up his pant leg, and he showed me. And in the war, he had been shot in the leg, and I don't know any details, but anyway, whether the bone was broken and repaired, but his calf had a hole in it that you could see through. So, the bullet went through, tore everything up, and they were able to put it back together, but he didn't have any muscle in that leg. So where the calf would have been, that's where you could see through. I never will forget that. And then there was this other, it was the Lord looking over me, what it was. There was this one apartment house. It was brick, and it was U-shaped, and it was right across the street from where I lived. And it had a court, and then apartment units around on the ground, and then the alley was over to the west of it, and there were apartments along by the alley. And so I was collecting one time, and I came to this door, knocked on it, and the guy said, "Come on in." So I went in, and while I was in there, he said, "Oh, take a look at this pen I've got." And I think it was ballpoint, I'm not sure. So it had the picture of this lady standing there, and he said, "Now turn it upside down." And when you turn it upside down, her clothes slid off of her, and in some kind of a liquid or something. And then you turn it back up again, they come back on. So naked lady. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "By the way, I just had heart surgery, and they made a film of it. Would you like to watch that film?" And he pointed to a room, a dark room, which would probably have been the bedroom, and he wanted me to go in there and watch his film. And I didn't have time, and I didn't want to anyway. But it makes me when I got old enough to understand things, made me wonder what his plans were if I'd have gone in there into his bedroom. So anyway, so there's that one, and then that cart coming down the same alley, as a matter of fact. I was in a hurry. I don't know why I was in such a hurry, but for one reason or another, I was in a hurry, and I'm pushing that cart. I'm running behind it, pushing it. Got my hand on that lever, and morning, and but I didn't see there was some kind of a pothole or something, and I don't remember which wheel it was, but one of the wheels hit that pothole and stopped, and so that front steering 2x4, that wheel stopped, and it pulled that 2x4 like that, which put the brake on. When that wheel hit, put the brake on, and so the paper box, or my cart, went up like this, and I had my hand on it and everything, so it actually threw me out in front of it. So I had a sprain, or I had a bruised shin, and and a lot of pain. So anyway, that was my paper route, and I had that paper route even when I got into high school, I kept that paper route because I lived on it and got to know the people and everything. So those are some details of my paper route, which uh, I hope you enjoyed listening to my paper route story. Um, anyway, I want to thank you for watching my video, and God bless.